Though quarrels arise, their numbers are few. Laughter and singing will see us through. I'd dealt with monsters before. The Hydra in flank, the mutated dragonlings in stockyard, red scorpions, manticores, all of them dangerous. But no matter how big or how small they were, they all made sense. Limbs, legs, head, fangs, hooves, stingers. The arrangement might be odd, but in their own way, they made sense. This didn't make sense. The walls, floor, ceiling, everything was moving. It was impossible to tell where metal ended and flesh began. Eyes were bulging. Mouths were opened in one long scream. There were organs between the equipment, meaty appendages, intestines. I clenched my stomach as I backed away. It felt like my insides were moving, like my tainted guts were trying to crawl right out of my throat. I fought for one moment and then puked on the inside of my helmet. It wasn't bad compared to what followed at the other end. And worst of all, I wanted to join that scream. It scratched at my throat. "Stop it!" I shouted as I tried to back away, but my limbs were stuck to the floor. No, the floor was crawling up my legs. No, my legs were sinking into the floor. "Stop it, please!" I begged. Then things got worse. It stopped. Those eyes watched. The molded steel and flesh seemed to be waiting, watching. "She's not joined our choir," the mouths whispered. Sweet Celestia. Were they? You can talk," I murmured as I stared. Pony eyes. Pony mouths. Luna saved me. I even saw cutie marks in that mix. "She is very close. Close to joining the choir," one mouth whispered. Rainbow spittle drizzled from its lips. "We should make her join ours instead." The drooling lips grinned. "I don't understand what you mean. A choir? I can't sing." I looked over at Rampage, but her eyes were wide and staring. She looked like a foal trapped in a nightmare. There was a low, long snicker. "Oh, every pony can. Listen." The mouths began screaming. One scream of many notes going on, and I'd been wrong. We were both trapped in a nightmare. I wanted P21 here to blow all this up. I wanted Lacuna here with her stupid goddess to sneer and disdain. I wanted glory. Sweet Celestia, I needed glory to tell me that it was going to be all right. "Stop!" And again they did. A wide, slack-mouthed poking between two monitors murmured, "She does not like our song." It sounded almost apologetic. "Why?" snickered a mare's mouth. "She's so close to us already. She's singing parts herself. We heard her." I felt something move around my hooves, but I couldn't look. "You mean you were singers before this?" I gasped, refusing to look down. If I saw, I would start screaming. I didn't think I would ever stop. "No. We joined the choir after." The mare stuck in the wall beside me murmured softly, "Force her to join. Make her sing." Several of the voice began to babble. Wait! What happened here?" I asked, looking around. Oh goddesses, my insides were moving. I felt a little wire in my mind, and it was like being drawn tighter and tighter. And then it stopped. The eyes stared at me, pony eyes watching and blinking and staring. There were veins running along the deformed metal and around the equipment. They pulsed as the lips slowly moved on their own. I stared at the ropey gray intestines and felt my own squirming within. "There was a box," whispered the lips near the pedestal. "A box came with a mystery within." Rampage murmured beside me. Blackjack, we need to get out of here. Please, let's just get out of here. A mysterious container, containing a wonder. The lips murmured. I felt something on my legs, but I was incapable of moving. I could only stare into the eyes. Goddesses, was there something in my eye socket again? Glory'd burned it out. Burned it! One of the screens, its surface bulging like a blister, flashed to life. The image was a mess of bilious greens and yellows as it showed bucks and mares around a small black box. One mare, with some sort of pastry or cake on her rump, opened the black case. I was Applejack's cousin. I could open it, came a whisper from a green mouth above. The silver bullet came out and was placed on the warped pedestal. What are you doing? I asked as I felt my stomach heave again, then swallowed. Freeze. Cold. So cold. A blue pair of lips murmured before licking back a trickle of rainbow snot. On the screen, a mechanical arm swung over the pedestal, and a diamond wafer touched the metal. We tried to cut, oh so carefully, but we could not. We knew not. The twisted grin cackled. But I remembered the secret. I remembered the metal, the note. One of the bucks on the screen waved his hooves enthusiastically, till the rest gathered around the frozen bullet. The note of our song. Now I watched with fascination as the blade cut the silvery metal with ease. Unicorn magic pulled it apart. Blackjack, we have to go. This is fucked up. We need to go right now. But I couldn't move. I had two choices: watch and learn, or start screaming. I felt something in the back of my throat. I prayed that I was only imagining it, moving. A minute, I croaked as the silver bullet was cracked open. I have to see this, because everything else would make me scream. That's a weird bullet, Rampage murmured at my blind side. That wasn't a bullet. I might know dick about, well, all this, but I knew my bullets. It might have been bullet-shaped, but the entire thing was one solid worked piece of metal divided into two sections. The larger of the two, a distorted half-sphere near the base of the shell, and with its broad flat side on the dividing wall, was packed full of grayish paste like P-21's explosives. A small hole pierced through the shell to the small compartment, most of which was taken up by a strange glowing hexagonal piece of crystalline stone that the robot arms saw hadn't been able to cut through. Packed around the stone was some kind of thick goop that reminded me of that rainbow sludge now drizzling out of the lips of the room. I exposed myself to that sludge each time I'd fired Folly. I remembered the warped and twisted bones in Ironshad's firearms. R&D. Melted like this room. Scalpel had detected the taint in me days after I'd fired Folly at Miramir. After firing it in the factory, I'd been told by triage that my taint exposure had jumped once again. I'd been killing myself with every shot of the superweapon. No, not killing myself. Turning myself into this. The room muttered, giggling, and laughed softly. What is that? That crystal? That sludge? That metal? I gasped. I lurched, but managed not to fall over. I knew I'd seen that odd glowing gem somewhere before. The room, however, gave a hateful shriek that made me spasm. The walls began to pulsate. Blackjack? Tell me we can get the fuck out of here. Blackjack? Rampage said. I tried to wave my hoof to buy some time, but I couldn't lift it. Shit. Oh, shit. Shit, she muttered. That rock. of a lesser song, the medal of a great glory, the potion, the ichor of the meddler, a neutral buffer to separate the two. The mouse murmured in unison. Sing with us. Sing with your screams with us. The others can't join. She is a false unity, but you can be together with us. Unity? I gasped as I struggled to step back. I couldn't step anywhere. My heart was beating so hard that I was amazed I hadn't fallen flat on my face. You're with the goddess. The mouths were silent. One chuckled, then another. Then the rest went wild in mad glee. She is not a child of the choir. Imitation, false, forgery, manufactured. She babbles our tune, and will be undone. She is not a true choir, nor is your friend there. Isolated, separated, she cannot join us. Thank goodness. Now, Blackjack, out, now. But I couldn't get out. I couldn't leave. If I did, part of me would tear its way out of my body and stay. A part that wanted to stay. And you're a true choir. I gasped for air again, and swallowed, desperate to puke again if I could. I wanted to get whatever was inside me out. The walls were beating like a heart, but with an alien beat, singular contractions rather than a double pulse. I imagined my own heart was beating in time with the meat. Please let it only be in my head. We are, but trapped in flesh, kept apart. We will join, in time, when we were the latest to join the greatest choir in such a long time. The greater song, they murmured in unison. Let us sing for you. And one began to scream, then another, and another. Their screams blended together, one building on the next with a singular note, a note that grew and grew, and I was singing with it. Not through my lips. No. It was coming from inside my chest. I was going to sing with it too, till there was nothing left but that song. Blackjack, glory's waiting. Rampage yelled in my face. Then I stared at my friend, her red and white stripes seeming to melt together. Her tissue looked mottled and knotted, even scaly, and there was a wing forcing itself out of her shoulder through a gap in her armor. As I watched, a small horn was twisting slowly out of the side of her head. Are you just going to leave her up there to wonder what happened to us? That shout and that look snapped me out of it for a precious moment. I looked down at my hooves, but the metal meat amalgamation had sealed itself around each of them like concrete. I only hoped that the safety suit had prevented me from fusing completely with the floor. Cut me out. It's time to get out of here. I tugged and struggled and rampaged toward the floor with the hoof claws, but each slash splattered us with rainbow ichor, and the rents healed, and the scream bored deeper into my mind with every passing second. Rampage turned to the screens, the distorted pictures now showing the bullet letting off plumes of rainbow gas and the ponies around it melting and falling into still living heaps. One showed the walls chewing pickets, and Celestia. Were those teeth I felt working on the ends of my limbs, chewing through the suit? I blasted with the shotgun, wishing I'd loaded incendiary rounds. Damn it! Will you bastards play something else? That song is old. Rampage yelled as she struggled to free my right leg. And then I felt it, a squirm inside of me, at the words as the screams went on inside me and around me. Oh, goddesses. Inside me. Inside me. The screaming was inside of me. I felt like I was going to give birth or something. It was going to claw its way out of me, turn me inside out. I wanted to take her ripper and tear myself open. Get it out. Get it out now. Calm down, Blackjack, rasped the dealer in my ear. Go into Sats. What? But I couldn't argue. I simply wanted to scream forever. I did. It was all I could do, all I could think of. But Sats didn't help. I couldn't target myself, and this was the one time that shooting Rampage wouldn't help. Even Folly was back with my barding and saddlebags. The room didn't offer any obvious target or weak point. It just let me see the pony flesh wiggling its way out from the gaps and vents of the room. But then I realized something else the spell gave me. Time. Time to think. Time to calm down. If I lost it completely, then I wouldn't be able to do anything. That's it. Panic never helped any pony, the dealer said softly as he trot out in front of me to stand beside Rampage. Now, I know you can't speak, but you can think. So think about this thing. What is it? What does it want? What is its weak point? Everything has at least one. I looked at the gaunt, pale buck with the battered hat. What did the room want? To eat me? Or fuse with me? No. That was what it was doing to me. And I wanted to... Some horrible, treasonous part of my mind wanted to sing right along. But I had other songs. This thing wanted music. Then I'd give it some. I'd give it something else to listen to. Something better than just screams. I selected the song, the most powerful one I knew, and cranked the volume all the way up. I slipped out of Sats and hit play. For a moment, I thought the music wouldn't be able to overcome that single horrible screaming note. But then it rose. I felt my insides spasm in response. But the song of dozens of ponies in the little chapel filled that pit. I could almost see Priest as I listened to his majestic music. The scream faltered, with some voices babbling curses or hissing in pain. My pip-buck continued to play, the swelling music made by Priest, Medley, and all the other ponies with that little knot of hope. As I watched, the flesh seemed to be driven away, the eyes clenching in pain as the pulse fluctuated wildly. Rainbow ichor burst from some of the veins in the room, reacting horribly to the swelling hymn of the two princesses, now long parted from this world. I might not have been able to believe in goddesses anymore, but I could believe in beauty, kindness, and harmony. My legs pulled free from the pits they were stuck in, and I took a few staggering steps. For a moment, I thought I would run for it, leaving this place forever, after seeing if P-21 could seal away or collapse it. And I would have, too. Except for one thing. Just one. The room was crying. The dozens of mouths now sang the melody that I'd been playing. Dozens of pained, ashamed ponies turned into something horrid, but still ponies. And I had to give them something. Anything that would help. No peace from violence, but peace from this horror. I slowly stepped towards the wall. "I'm sorry," I murmured, as I looked at those bright and pained eyes. "I don't know how to help you." "You have," Amer said quietly, as the rest hummed the melody. "You have, so much. You reminded us of what we were, what we should be. Is there... Can I change you back?" I asked, thinking it might be impossible. From the way her lips turned into a sad smile, it was. "I'm sorry. I wish I could do something. Give you something." "You can," a buck said softly. "In the storeroom next door, there are chemicals. Benzene, ethanol, and methanol. Hydrogen and oxygen talismans. Acetone. Toluene. Spill them. Ignite them. Don't let us go back to what we were." The lips trembled as it whispered softly. "We're so tired of screaming." "Right," Rampage said with a nod. "I'm going to need your shotgun, and it's probably going to be ruined." I passed it to her without hesitation. "I've had less than a day," I muttered with a thin smile. "Are you going to be okay?" I'll burn up, but..." she said as she looked at her warped hide. 2 apples, 1 stone. I'll be fine. Believe it or not, this isn't the first time I've been all mutated up. I could believe it, and I couldn't help myself. I hugged her for helping me do this, snapping me out of it and helping these poor ponies. You've got 2 songs. Get clear before then. I don't think they'll stay lucid long, Rampage said softly as she patted my back. Then she turned to the room and said grandly, Okay, every pony, let's hear an encore. And the chorus began to sing, and it hurt. Whatever had made them like this gave them that scream to sing, also made the melody pierce like nails. Even I hurt, but at least I didn't think that my insides were singing. Oh, please, let them not be singing. As I trot towards the door, I spotted something that had been hidden by the mats of metal flesh. It was a strange white crystal that had been inside the cut-out silver bullet. It wasn't very big, about the same size as as a shotgun shell. I peeked into the storage room. Glass bottles, metal storage tanks, lots of warnings about flammables and keeping the door shut at all times. Perfect. I used my magic to turn on the hydrogen and oxygen talismans. Clearly, they were clearly labeled. There was also leaking drums marked Hippocamptic Research that had once been filled with the rainbow crud. Just another reason to go there the second I was finished with the Rangers. Rampage grinned and said, Get out of here. It's going to get toasty pretty quick. And with that, she started knocking over some large glass jugs. I paused at the door to the lab, picking up the white crystal and floating it beside me. Goodbye, I said as the room started the next stanza. Rampage was violating every safety rule posted on the walls as she kicked and ripped barrels in the cryogenics lab, taking great glee in the destruction. I had picked my way up the stairs by the 3rd stanza, looking back, but keeping going as I headed for the exit. As I reached it, there was a muffled bang behind me, followed by the sound of a great breath being sucked in and then let out all at once. The pressure wave knocked me over, and a tongue of flame raced up the stairs behind me, spreading out overhead. Fortunately, the fire didn't go much further than that. I lay there for a moment, then slowly sat up, my pip-buck still playing the tune. I turned it off and stared at the flames pouring up the stairs. A black, pony-shaped silhouette appeared amid the flames. Black plates of char and flesh moved with careful steps as she stood at the top of the fire, licking her hides, as the edges and tips of her armor glowed a faint red. Only Rampage could bathe in fire. The blackened flesh sloshed off in new chunks with each step as she walked towards me. She clenched her eyes hard, and when they opened, she looked at me and slowly grinned. She shook herself, scattering charred, greasy flakes like so many playing cards, then coughed a little ball of rolling smoke and spat black phlegm to one side. The raw pink flesh paled to white with her familiar red stripes showing through. Hate fire, she said, looking at her blackened steel hoof blades. Takes forever to clean my armor. I just smiled in amazement. Are they? I asked as I looked behind her. If they're not, then I don't think there's anything we can do for them. I started to remove the hazardous material suit, and she raised a hoof. I'd wash before you take it off. You're sort of dripping there, Blackjack. I felt and smelled like I was trapped in a well-used toilet. But I was bad enough off taint-wise at the moment. I could wait a little longer. So, I said as we walked out of the subway tunnels. Just curious, Where the hay did you get that armor? This? She asked with a little smile. This is Hammersmith's finest work. He makes all the quality weapons for the Reapers. Since you left my armor down in the tunnels, I had to go and get it. And you didn't get messed up? I asked as we started up the rusty escalator. If I did, I don't remember it, she replied calmly. Down the elevator, then up the stairs into the factory, right where you dropped it next to Lacuna's Gatling gun, she said with a smile. One weird thing, though. I'm not sure if I can take any more weird. Period. I've exceeded my weirdness quota for the rest of my life. Not that that was very long, anyway. She arched a brow, and I sighed. Okay, lay it on me. Talking walls, flesh-melting magic fields, I can take it. I braced myself for another soul-crushing revelation, or infuriating, vague puzzle. It was all cleaned up. I stopped and looked at her. Like someone had come along and put everything back, fixing up all the stuff you blasted. Then she looked a little more coolly at me. And by the way, Blackjack, I've got to say I'm a little put out that you had some sort of super mega destruction spell and you were going to fire and I wasn't in the way. I gave her a little smile, the most I could manage. I was a little occupied, but I promise, the next time I fire a super taint-ridden weapon of mass destruction, I'll make sure that you're in the line of fire. I sighed as I thought about it, but honestly, my brain just couldn't put it together. After dealing with that choir thing, what I'd felt beating inside my chest, hearing, I wanted to butt my head against the wall till I'd expunged the thoughts from my mind. Maybe I could get triage to... No. I couldn't do that. I'd just have to try and deal with them along with all the other horrors of the hoof. For the first time in a long time, I was glad to see that it was raining. P21 and Glory were arguing about leaving me down there. Lacuna looked politely disengaged from their squabble. Scotch was fiddling with Glory's busted beam rifle. At the sight of Rampage and me, Glory started towards me, but I warded her off with an upraised hoof. One sec. I'm coated in magical death juice. She looked like she wanted to hug me anyway. Oh, was it that bad? She asked as she chewed on her lip. I glanced at Rampage and passed a knowing look to her. Glory didn't need to know the details. Well, we were underground, so yeah, pretty unpleasant. I took off the helmet after the downpour had washed most of the rainbow stuff away and then unsealed the suit. Her eyes widened even more as I let the rain wash off the rest of the filth. Not for the first time, I missed the wonders of civilization. Like soap. I found out something interesting, though. I levitated my saddlebags and took out the black case. This seems to be the source of most of my taint. I popped it open and lifted the bullet free. See this half? All full of pure taint. But why? Is it some sort of chemical shell? Glory asked. My pip buck started ticking. It's an annihilation shell, Glory. Putting poison inside would be like putting a BB gun on a tank, P21 said archly. I spoke quickly to head off the argument. It also has this inside, and I held up the little white crystal. You know gems. I floated the crystal to her. Well, she turned it over. It's hexagonal. It might be a quartz. Looks like a talisman, but there's no glyph for the spell inside. She held it up to P21, but the blue buck just frowned and shrugged. She tossed it back to me, and I caught it with my magic. I sighed and lifted the silver bullet next to the glowing stone. Well, whenever this thing blows, it soaks every inch of me in taint. Heck, you know how it surrounds me with that magical field? It probably holds all that taint residue, which means I exposed all of you when I fired it underground. Scotch tape whipped her hoof. Okay. What the heck actually happened down there? Because every time you say underground, my mane stands on end. And she was scared. I could see it. She might not remember going down there, but some part of her knew it was bad. P21 frowned and looked away. I just sighed and smiled. Long story short, bad stuff happened. Really, not fun. You didn't miss much, I said, but she hardly looked satisfied. Okay, something to deal with later. Anyway, Trottenheimer made these bullets. Why, I have no idea. Apparently, it was right before the bombs fell. They cut one open down in the lab and sprayed everything with taint juice. So, not going to use it again. Bad bullets. But I smiled as I tapped the stone to the side of the bullet. Then it exploded. Of course it exploded. I couldn't take a dump without it. Okay, I could. But still, this was ridiculous. At least it wasn't a full-off, blowing off my hooves explosion. Really, it was just a flash and a pop that sent the silver bullet one way and the stone the other. Me? I was flat on my back in the middle, listening to my pitbuck screech. Wait. I stared at the rad readout as I watched the needle visibly rise. Lacuna groaned, her eyes closed with the expression of bliss and a blush on her cheeks. I was getting almost 20 rads a second. The amount was dropping fast, but holy shit. Right away, gimme! I shouted as I dug through my saddlebags. Every pony, drink some if we have enough. One dose of Radaway later, I was stabilized. Though Glory insisted I have one extra. It was hard to argue, that stuff was delicious. I picked up the stone and saw a tiny scuff where I'd tapped it. I retrieved the bullet and saw that the very polished silvery metal had a tiny indentation. All that from a tap. How the heck does this bullet have a stone inside if they explode on contact? I asked, as I put the bullet back into its case. I didn't want to send the damn thing off just by touching one another. Perhaps the taint solution only acts as a neutral buffer. If they cannot come in contact with each other, they cannot react, offered Lacuna. It was the best suggestion I could think of. Still, though, I'd traded the mystery of the silver bullet for the mysteries of the metal, the stone, the taint, and the reason why the hell any pony would ever make a weapon like that. One that killed its wielder? I could see folly on a tank or some power-armored gun, but it was a pistol. Had Trottenheimer been exceptionally poorly endowed or something? Thank you, Hoovington, I thought, as I finished watching myself. Then I paused. I looked at my legs. My hide had been white before, but now my legs were piss yellow, and there were ugly purple bruises at the ends of my hooves. I saw a little growth poking out the side of my fetlock. Just a little teardrop-shaped thing, an inch or so long, and poking about a quarter of an inch out of my leg. Then I spotted another, and another. Suddenly, I became aware of every pony staring at me. Only Glory was actually looking, but the rest had obviously just found other things to stare at while they paid attention to my tumors. I felt ugly, unclean, worse than just the mess I'd made of myself. I was suddenly aware of how slat-sided I'd become. I was still eating, but it seemed like all the food was going somewhere else. I felt like I was becoming something less than a pony and more like those poor creatures in the lab. I felt my security barding in place and strapped it down over my braces, keeping my eyes low. Don't look at me. Please don't look at me. I decided to hold on to the hazmat barding. It might come in useful later. You never knew when you'd have to descend into a taint-saturated hole of nightmares. Sweet Celestia, some pony shoot me if I ever say that again. Well, at least I'd gotten one mystery solved, and 4 more added. Frustrating as that might have been, though, it did take my mind off that. God, this is how I hated this place. I honestly preferred running from Deus. That was a threat I understood. A great big cyber pony who wanted to rob me, rape me, and kill me. He was something to run away from or destroy. Things I could do. Now, though, I needed to keep going. I'd fall apart if I simply stopped and let everything catch up to me. I wasn't that far from Horizon Labs to the Iron Mare Naval Base. In pre-war times, we probably could have made it in an hour. In pre-war times, though, we wouldn't have been able or been trying to evade patrols of Steel Rangers, mobs of Reapers, and the occasional Manticore flying overhead. We finally reached the base, fortunately without being spotted. The place was laid out more or less like Rampage's indicated, and the half-crumpled building that looked like a cake dropped on its side was impossible to miss. Now, we just had to get as close as possible to Elder Crunchy Carrots before being discovered so that Steel Rain couldn't make us disappear. Then, hopefully, we'd be able to convince her to stop the war, and after that, we'd be able to find something that would tell me where EC-1101 was supposed to go next. But really, what was the point? I was dying, and even if I found out where to go next, even if I stopped this war, I'd still be dying. I felt it. Everything inside me just felt wrong. This didn't feel like my body anymore. This body felt old and tired and used up. An aching old bag of hurt. No matter how fast I went, it would still be with me. This was one thing that I couldn't leave behind. I was going to die. But if I was, then I wanted my life to mean something. Something to make up for all the ponies I'd hurt and killed. It wouldn't be enough. It would never be enough. Something to atone for the pain I'd caused all my friends. Something so that, when I died, I might have a chance at the afterlife. Or something better than what I thought I deserved. Finding EC-1101 and Horizons might not matter at all. But the alternatives was to either give in and accept Sanguine's tempting offer, or give up and wait to die. All in all, death by a ranger's shell sounded better. We were passing more atrocities. Rows of dead ponies pressed to a wall and then drawn through with lines of gunfire. Most of them didn't look like Reapers. They looked like dirty, desperate ponies caught in the middle of something that was chewing every pony up. The Rangers hadn't even bothered to loot the bodies. I looked the other way while P-21 went about that job. My shotgun had gotten cooked, so I was left with Vigilance and Taurus's rifle. While caps were getting pretty much worthless to me, my friends would need them after I was gone. We disguised Lacuna as well as we could. Her black dress had been lost, but we'd found some canvas that we could use to hide her wings. Hopefully, no pony would wonder why she was half again taller than Rampage. The goddess was clearly ignoring us, given that there wasn't a single telepathic murmur about the indignity of hiding her wings. I picked up telepathic murmurs every now and then about that little mare and what they were going to do when she arrived, though. Apparently, it was quite a debate between putting her in Unity, killing her, or just using her. I tried to tune it out as best I could. I had enough problems myself. And I wasn't the only one. As we crept along the main street of Iron Mare Town, I spotted the red bars around the corner, and a group of blue non-hostiles. I waved the others to stop and carefully poked my head around the ruined wall. The blue bars were a small family making their way towards us from the east with a Brahmin behind them. They looked desperate, their eyes alert, but they didn't have a magic EFS that could see through walls. And the red bars... Well, looky here, Crumpets. Reaper spies, if I ever saw some, Omer said, her voice amplified by the speakers on her power armor and echoing down the side street she was trotting up. We're not spies, the buck in the lead on the small band protested. We're just trying to get home. We live in Toll. Please, we've been stuck out here for days. The others began to shy back, all except for a unicorn mare who seemed quite amused by all this. They don't look like spies, Shrapnel, murmured the other ranger mare in a doleful voice. Are you certain? Look, that just means they're good spies. Shrapnel laughed. I know you're used to dealing with things differently in Trottingham, Crumpets, but this is the hoof. Shoot first, shoot last. Let the goddesses sort 'em out. Well, fuck me if I was gonna let that happen. Hey! I yelled as I trotted around the corner. Yoo-hoo! Much better target here. Blackjack, you idiot. P21 growled as he limped out after me. Great. More nut jobs, Shrapnel said, turning towards me. Grenade, machine gun, and missile launcher configuration. Who are you supposed to be? She said as she took a look at me. 3 magic bullets to the head. I could drop her. I could end her life, even at this range. So why was I hesitating? After all the shit I'd gone through today, why didn't I just end her there and then? She was scum threatening a family. You don't kill ponies to save ponies. Security saves ponies. And I was security. I suppose that also meant that I was a damned idiot, too. I'm security, I said, thinking that should be obvious, but then my barding was shot, I had braces taped to my limbs, and I was using a hunting rifle to threaten a mare with a missile launcher strapped to her sides. Really, I added. You're either crazy or stupid, Shrapnel murmured. Crazy. Definitely crazy, P21 muttered. But either way, you're fucking dead, she shouted, and I sighed. Sorry, Fluttershy, I wanted to do better. I tried. Then, Crumpets trotted in front of her companion. You're the security I've heard so much about. Unlike Shrapnel, Crumpets spoke with a strange, smooth accent. Her armor had slightly different decorations around its edges, and instead of heavy weapons, she possessed a long rifle and what looked like a belt-fed shotgun. Jolly good to meet you, girl. Been following you ever since the DJ mentioned you helping those Crusader children. Shrapnel said exactly what I thought as Crumpets reached out and shook my hoof vigorously. Hello? Crumpets, we're supposed to be shooting her. I looked past toward the family was creeping out of sight into the ruins as more rangers approached. I'd call that a victory. Shooting her? She whirled in Shrapnel. Are you daft? She's the heroine of Hoovington. She's fought things I can hardly imagine. Why, half of us agreed to come to your aid because of her. And you want to shoot her? I'd rather you didn't. I bit my lip as I pointed at her belt-fed shotgun. That's not an iron pony, is it? She turned and looked at it. Oh no, it's an Archer 16 based off an early model IF-86. Useful against bloodwings, manticores, crawlers, and gorals. I don't think that they've made a non-power armor model, though. I think we have far more monsters about old Trottingham than you do here in the Hoof. That certainly makes sense. Hoofington was so deadly that even monsters had a hard time. And is that an IF-72 Longhorn? Lacuna asked softly as she pointed at the rifle, prompting all of us to look at her. She shrank back. I was simply curious. Oh, look. I'm pointing at an IF-99, and I don't give a fuck at them. Now, get with the program, Crumpets. Are you Trottingham pansies going to actually help us out or not? We have our orders, and we need to take her out, Shrapnel shouted. You think I'm going to kill security? Crumpets replied. She turned, her weapons clicked. You cowardly, dishonorable, contemptible, callow slattern. I would sooner shoot a despicable fiend such as yourself than ever dare to train my bullets on a hero who has bled so much for others. I suddenly imagined exactly what Shrapnel was seeing. A whole lot of red surrounding her. We have orders! Easily redeemed, bellowed a familiar voice as he loomed up behind her. Paladin Sugar Apple Bombs, Stronghoof, picked Shrapnel up, armor and all, and pointed her to the south. I am immediately assigning you to accompany us to the battlefield to help defend our order. I am pleased that you will fulfill this commission to the best of your ability. The other rangers behind him all had the Trottingham style of armor. "Paladin bombs," I said with a grin. In return, his blue visor gave me a dangerous gleam that made me shiver. "I mean, Paladin Stronghoof. You made it through the fight." He threw shrapnel casually behind him as he dropped back onto all fours. "Indubitably. The Stronghoof endurance has been passed down the family line for generations, and I'm quite glad that was I who found you." He looked back over his shoulder at shrapnel, steam blasting out of his nostrils. "As you can see, the Star Paladin has ordered you and your friends to be killed on sight." I grimaced. "Damn, I was hoping you could introduce me to your elder. Why couldn't it ever be easy?" He sighed and shook his head. "And who might aid you, being sent out to keep the line? I fear that until you get to the Elder, you won't find any friends aboard the Celestia." That would be a problem. How am I going to get to her, then, without Steel Rain juicing me? "I can think of only one way," he said in a low voice. "You surrender yourself to Chief Acolyte Napalm Strike. He oversees our studies of various munitions and will be at the base in the old dry docks. Give yourself up to him and request to see the Elder. While he shares some of Steel Rain's sentiments about technology, he is an honorable buck." I didn't like this at all. Giving up? And I doubted that my friends would let me hand myself over alone. "You sure?" He nodded once. "And you must do so soon. Even with the Trottingham reinforcements, we are being sorely pushed on all fronts. I fear that the Elder may do something drastic to end the war." He then looked at Lacuna. "Now, there's just one last thing I must do." I felt a nervous prickle. He didn't seem like the type to just kill her for being an alicorn, but... He approached Lacuna, my other friends moving aside. With a hiss, his helmet detached, and he exposed his beautiful visage, his bright blue eyes gleaming to cause sparkles to dance around as he knelt and reached out a hoof to take hers between his. "Please, glorious lady, will you accept my humble apologies for the indignity that I performed upon you? To mar your beautiful throat with such an ugly device is a sin that weighs heavily upon my conscience. Never before have I seen such an expression of perfection, grace, dignity, or humility such as yourself." Lacuna just blinked as she looked down into the shimmering blue eyes. "Oh, my. What do I do? What do I do? The goddess, this has never happened before." She asked me desperately as she blushed furiously. She was asking me for relationship advice. Glory, however, smiled as she covered her lips with a hoof and gave a cough that sounded suspiciously like, "Say yes." Lacuna glanced at her, then back at the kneeling Stronghoof. Yes?" His eyes shimmered, and Lacuna quickly looked quite delightful, be stunned as he rose and thrust his power hoof into the air with a whistle of his pneumatic pistons. "Yes!" he roared, and I could almost have sworn that the sun peeked out behind him. How else could he have glowed like that? Then he took her in his hooves and said, "Thank you for your generous forgiveness, sweet lady. My treatment of you was unforgivable." Lacuna blushed from head to hoof. I wonder what the goddess thought of it. "I notice he's not apologizing to me," P21 muttered. Suddenly, Stronghoof loomed over the blue buck. You attempted to glue a live grenade onto my armor through sneakiness and deception." P21 went white as a sheet as he cowered away from Stronghoof, looking as if he wanted to disappear into the ground. Then Stronghoof put his hoof on P21's shoulder. "It also took phenomenal bravery on your part to try and do so to help your friend. You easily could have paid for that with your life. Not many would think enough of an alicorn to risk their lives for her. For your gallantry, I apologize to you as well." P21's mouth opened and then closed. Finally, he just nodded once. Really, what could you say after that? Stronghoof straightened and put his helmet back in place. "Once, long ago, we served at the behest of Applejack. not to wage bloody war, but to defend this land and its people. We've strayed from that noble origin and allowed ourselves to grow petty and covetous. Shrapnel gave a sour snort, though. With half a dozen others watching raptly, I couldn't see her trying something. But then Paladin Stronghoof turned to face her. Yes, Shrapnel. There is more to being a ranger than power armor and oaths to follow orders. Behind both is an ideal, a calling not simply to be stronger than our enemies, but better as well. A standard for others to look up to. Can you say that you hold such a standard, Shrapnel? The mare fell silent, and just stared back and shrank a little as every eye turned on her. She stammered a moment. The huge buck nodded once, and then said gravely, Without that idea, I fear that we are little better than a well-equipped gang, and it is past time for that point to be decided. He turned back towards me and my friends. Good luck. I shall hope for your success. After that, the rangers galloped south towards the sounds of gunfire. Well, that was nice of him, Glory said pleasantly before smiling at Lacuna. And he fancies you. Imagine that. She frowned as she looked at the furiously blushing Alicorn. Are you all right? It won't stop. Lacuna muttered softly. I smiled and shook my head. Steel Rangers hitting on Alicorns. Monsters screaming rooms, singing hymns. What's next? The filthy family emerged and slowly approached us. Thanks, security. I thought she was going to shoot all of us. The buck rubbed his neck. We've got to get out of here. Everything is nuts. Just nuts. Rampage trot up to him. Anything to report? The Rangers hauled a giant bunch of bullets and stuff out of the water while we were collecting radgator eggs. Really huge bullets. They're also moving lots of material on board from the shore. They've had power armor going in and out of the water for a while now, the buck reported. 20 more arrived from Trottingham this morning, and another 30 from all over. As you can see, they're saving their own. Bastards. He looked in the direction the paladin had gone. And they're sending their best to die. Rampage nodded. Well, hopefully this will be over soon. Bloody Butcher's bill is gonna be terrible. Doubt that. Even any fillies or burners after this fight is over. Heck, might not even be any reapers. We lost Deus and Gorgon. Splitter brought it in this morning. Frenzy, too. No ponies seen Black Dog or Talon. That leaves Big Daddy, Brutus, me, and Psycho Shy of the top 10. Something else, too, the buck said. Ghouls have been more active than usual. Rocket Town's under attack. By who? Rampage snorted. No pony can get within 5 miles of that place. Radiation's so bad it gives me a sunburn. Hellhounds, I've heard. Whole damn pack attacking the missile base. Not the space center, though. Not yet. Red Eye is making a mess of the VC all over the east. Zebras sniping at society ponies in the south. It's crazy. Just crazy. He shuddered. We'll get a report in when we get back to Toll. Hell, maybe move to Megamart or Riverside. Everywhere else is just insane right now. Or you could just leave the hoof, P21 pointed out dryly. Nobody leaves the hoof, the dirty, haggard buck said fantastically before continuing east. Glory stared at them as they left before gaping at Rampage. You mean they were spies? I just smiled, shaking my head a little. Rampage rolled her eyes. Right now, anyone who's not wearing power armor is a spy against the Rangers. You've only just really known Stronghoof. The fact is that most Rangers don't give a shit about helping others. They think that they have a goddess-given right to take whatever tech they like. Every now and then you might find a good ranger. Your strong hoofs, your steel hooves. Maybe it's a hoof thing, but inevitably they get eaten up while the rest hide in their bunkers and survive. Big Daddy told me about it once. They had found a water talisman in a gutted stable. The professor extracted it and got it working. It was amazing. Clean water, enough for a settlement. But of course they couldn't decide what to do with it. Keeper wanted to sell it. Awesome wanted to install it in his own little kingdom. Dawn wanted to give the water away. The professor wanted to study it, but Carrots insisted that it be returned to her. Nothing to do with it. Simply because it was old tech. Anything made by stable tech was the Ranger's by right. And when the others pressed the issue, she took it and stomped into dust rather than let out another use of the MWT's tech. That's what the Rangers represent. Stronghoof might be what they could be someday, but he's a minority, and he knows it. I sighed, looking to the north. I could only hope that there was something I could say or offer. I'm more worried about them loading that ship with giant bullets. Maybe they just want to stock up, but I'd only seen the Celestia from a distance. But I remembered the size of those guns. We'd crept as close as I cared to creep. Every second that passed, I kept remembering two little things. 2-mile accuracy and 120 millimeter. That was the size of my hoof. Peeking through my scope, I saw Rangers keeping lookout for us. All their firepower aside, I just imagined Steel Rain's guns turning any one of us, or all of us, into a fine, lingering red mist. The Ranger's perimeter looked pretty well laid out. I couldn't see any way to get through it or over it, and I wasn't even going to try to find a way under it. But that was what an alicorn was for. Cheating. We were a mile from the crumpled headquarters building, and Lacuna had a nice load of radiation boosting her. She peered through my rifle's scope at the collapsed pile of rubble. There was at least one Ranger on the roof and another one at the base, but none in the middle. There were constant sounds of gunfire behind us. The Reapers were pushing in from all sides. Power armor didn't matter much against 10-to-1 odds, and with every Ranger they killed, they moved closer to taking the base. Normally, that wouldn't bother me. But now that I had met Stronghoof and Crumpets, I knew that the good ones were the ones who would die first. Lacuna found a spot she hoped she could get us in from, and we gathered together. In a purple flash, we disappeared and reappeared on a narrow shelf next to the door. Fortunately, it was strong enough to support us. My pip-buck started to click slowly. 1 rad per second. No problem now, but if we lingered here for too long... Overhead there was a dull rumble of thunder. Then I narrowed my eye, glaring up at the rain. Of course. It had to start really pouring now. The door was locked, but P-21 worked his magic on the lock and we were in. Papers were strewn across the floor, and the walls were covered in cracks and gaping rents. Many of the walls had an ominous lean to them. Not quite enough to come crashing down, but definitely enough to make me worry. Still, I was encouraged by the garbage covering the floor. It meant that the Rangers didn't come through this section. Okay, magical, mystical pip-buck, I said as I checked my navigation. This is a great big blasted building, and I don't have all day. Where do I need to go? There, on my navigation, was a tiny little chevron to the south. Well, at least I had a direction. Now I just had to figure out how to get to it. I don't know what I'd expected in a Hoofington command center, but it wasn't all these offices. We passed one after the next, most collapsed or well looted. Just because the Rangers didn't come through here didn't mean that somebody else hadn't come through a century before them. P-21 found the obligatory random assortments of caps, bullets, clipboards, and coffee mugs as we picked through the offices. My sword picked off the rad roaches that came scurrying out with suicidal glee. Looked like we'd have to go down, and that was never a good direction in Hoofington. There weren't any intact stairs, but there was an elevator shaft. Lacuna hovered in the middle and lowered us all down to the next floor. More offices, these a bit more intact. More rat roaches too. I let Rampage take care of these. The relish she tore into them with was still a bit disconcerting, but at least she was enjoying herself. Blackjack? Did I kill some pony? Scotch's question stopped all of us cold. I saw her off to the side, staring at a heap of bones. Why? Why would you ask that? Glory said in a voice loaded with forced sweetness. I keep feeling like something really bad happened, and I don't know what. She looked up at us with her brilliant green eyes, and she chewed on her lip. I wonder if I did something bad, or something. Was she bringing this up now? I sighed. Of course she was, because I made a mistake, and because it bothered her, and because I was the only one who would tell her. Peter Nuan just stared away. Lacuna simply looked sad, Rampage angry, and Glory scared. I sighed and took a seat. Come here, Scotch. I wondered if this was how Mom felt. The part of your life you can't remember. We were in the tunnels. We came across a monster. A really big and scary monster. And for a time afterwards, you tried to deal with it. But I glanced at P21, but he simply focused on his bum leg. You did kill some pony, trying to save my life. But it bothered you a bunch. You said you wished you didn't remember any of it. So I asked Triage to modify your memories. Take them away. Scotch backed away from me. You've messed with my mind? I did, I said softly. It was my call, mine alone. The others were against it. I lied, glancing at Glory's shamed face. I wanted to give you peace, keep you safe. By messing with my mind, she yelled, glaring at me. Were you planning on taking away the battle just now too? Or how about destroying my home? How about killing every pony I ever knew? She shouted in rage. How about Mom dying? Why didn't you take that memory away, Blackjack? Well, this was going swimmingly. I only wanted to help you, I said softly, feeling tired. Help me? You've been fucking with my mind. I hate you. You came back that night and destroyed my entire life. I hate you. She screamed at me and then turned, galloping away and sobbing. Scotch! Glory shouted. I glanced at P21, but he just sat there like an angry blue lump. I'll go help her, Rampage said as she rose to her hooves. Maybe it was the phrase. Maybe it was the tone. But I stared at the striped pony starting to walk after Scotch. My mane prickled. No, I said as I stood too. Glory, go bring her back. Rampage, you're staying with us. The armored pony tilted her head towards me and smiled gently, so very kindly. Only I can give her the help she truly needs. I'll take the hurting away, forever. And I watched that soft, kindly smile stretch wider and wider as her whole body slowly tensed like a wound spring. Glory, go, I said, as I lifted the sword in vigilance and looked into a murderess's eyes. Suddenly, Rampage turned and charged. 200 steel pounds of steel-encased fury smashed into me, like a wrecking ball, and knocked me off my hooves. Lacuna lifted Rampage into the air, but she twisted and thrashed, slamming her hooves against the ceiling and powering down Lacuna. Hoof claws dug deep into the alicorn's purple hide, tearing 6 bloody furrows into her flank. I rammed Rampage with as much power as my braced legs could muster, my magic pressing the pistol under her chin, and fired, but she jerked away at the last moment. All I did was blow off half of her muzzle. Glowing arrows flashed from Lacuna, slamming through Rampage's thick plating and into her sides. The holes closed before my eyes as her grin twisted back into place. She pounced atop me, her hoof claws tangling with my leg braces as I was knocked onto my back. I stomped vigilance to her belly and fired again and again. Let me give you peace, too. You hurt so damn much, but I'll help you. I'll help you like I'll help Scotch, she said as she twisted her hoof claws back and forth, working the tips into my flesh. My focus broke, and I dropped my weapons as I felt her rear hoof claws start to dig into my rear legs and belly. Then my sword went through her eye, and I looked up to see the handle gripped by P-21. He shoved it deep and twisted hard, the tip digging into her brain and making her spasm and jerk. Slowly, she turned to stare up at him. You're hurting too, she slurred, then slowly pushed herself towards him, more and more the blade slicing through her head. Wasn't this whole thing supposed to be some kind of stealth mission? Hadn't that been part of the plan? I'm pretty sure that getting hated by a filly and attacked by a friend didn't belong in a stealth mission. Then he twisted the blade hard as she screamed, blood splurting over his face. Every time she resumed moving, he twisted it back and ripped a new hole. Again and again, he wrenched the blade inside of her skull. Finally, she went limp atop me. There was a pause, silent but for P-21's panting. Then, can you, please, get this fucking thing out of my eye? Rampage slurred thickly. He looked at me, and I nodded. If she was talking about hurting in peace, it was probably okay. He pulled it free, and she shuddered as a hole, he'd argued, healed. She kept shaking slightly as she pushed herself off me, sniffling. I'm not crying, okay? I just had a sword in my eye. It hurts. She looked at Lacuna and me and grit her teeth. Fuck. Not again. Is Scotch okay? Scotch is okay, I replied. Pissed with me, but she didn't see that. Lacuna was using her cheating alicorn powers to slowly regenerate, while she pointed her horn to the cuts on my limb to heal them. P-21 stared at me for several long seconds like he was trying to say something. Then he turned his head and spat the weapon away. His eyes were hard and pitiless as he stared at Rampage. Almost frantically, he started to wipe the blood away, his eyes digging in as he glared at the mare, then ground his teeth. I should go. I shouldn't have come back. I was just so happy to be with you again. She shook her head. I felt like I was some pony more than a killer. Well, that's what you were. P-21 snapped crossly as he rose to his hooves. If you were in 99, you would have been best friends with Daisy. I bet you would have hit the breeding queue every second you could. P-21! I yelled, making him round on me. Not him too. What was with every pony? All my friends were going crazy. His eyes narrowed as he hissed. And you, why don't you just accept facts? It's over, Blackjack. You're dying, she's crazy, Scotch is helpless, Glory is hopeless. The sanest damn one of us is the damned alicorn. Rampage wants to go, she should go. We should all go. Do you really think we're going to hang on together once you die? Carry on your great quest? It's time to face the fact that we're done. You're going to die, and... He clenched his head and squeezed his eyes closed tightly. I stretched out a hoof towards him as tears crept up from between his eyelids. It's okay, P-21. No, it's not okay, Blackjack, he said as he shook his head. We just keep fighting, and we just keep losing. Rampage can't control herself any more than when she killed Thorn. You can't keep Scotch safe and happy. Glory just watches you falling apart more and more every hour. And no pony is willing to admit that this stupid little dysfunctional band of emotional retards is doomed. I'm sick of it, he said as he hissed his breath through his teeth and looked at me miserably. Why can't we just go home? It's better there. I didn't have to see everything in the goddamned wasteland hurting you. I carefully put my hoof on his shoulder. He recoiled a bit, then slowly turned and curled against it. My whole life, I said, I was nothing. A failure of a daughter and a joke of a security mare. I was clueless, unwilling to admit just how fucked up my home was. And then I came out here with you, and suddenly I'm doing something with some meaning. Saving ponies, fighting monsters, even trying to unravel this stupid quest thing. I hugged him lightly. I know I'm going to die. We all do eventually. So, before I go, I want to do something that matters. I want to give this goddamned city what it deserves and help as many ponies as I can. P21 sniffled as he looked at me, and I touched his cheek softly. A person a lot better than I am once told me how to make up for getting Scootle killed. He said that you do everything you can to make up for it. You devote yourself to spending every second trying to do better. You hope that, when it's all over, the good you do will even start to come close to paying for your mistakes. And I've made mistakes, P21, and they've hurt ponies who never deserved it. Scootle, those foals, Clover, those zebras, 99. I know that I can never fully pay the price for those mistakes. Not ever. And if I hurt, well, it's just a little tipping the scales to make things square. That's why I have to do this. Because if I give up and go off to die comfortably without trying to do better, then their deaths were really pointless murder. That's so stupid. He sniffed, shaking his head. Hey, it's my plan. So of course it's stupid. I'm not a smart pony, remember? So much for my plans. I needed a few backup plans, preferably made by some pony other than me. He gave the ghost of a smile. Yeah, but you're a good one. He rubbed his eyes and sniffed. Sorry, Rampage. She looked at him evenly and shrugged. Don't worry about it. Like I said, doing all this stuff with you guys makes me feel like I'm doing something important for the very first time in my life. She pointed a hoof at me and added with a sharp grin. Even if you do get into the weirdest friggin' situations, Blackjack. Seriously, what is it with you in rooms that want to eat you? And with me constantly having to shoot her in the head, I wanted to add. But with her blood still smeared on my sword, I thought better of it. Once we were regrouped and restored, we continued downstairs. Scotch Tape wasn't speaking to me. I couldn't blame her for that. My attempt to try and protect her had gone down in flames. Glory kept giving me a she'll get over it look, but she didn't know just how long a mare in 99 could hold a grudge. I mean, I was still ticked off at Pastels for stealing my crayon. Well, okay, not really, but we had gotten really good at not letting old sights be forgotten. Still, I had to think of some way to make it up to Scotch. Some way that wasn't going to blow up in my face in a few more days. The deeper we went into the command center, the more apprehensive I became. We'd passed an armory looted within an inch of its life. The only thing that hadn't been cleaned out were 2 large security storage boxes set into the walls. Their surfaces scored from where somebody had tried to cut them out of the wall entirely. There was a stock of IF specialty ammunition. I was particularly interested in these 12mm rounds with bright blue tips and loaded several of them in the Vigilance's magazine with the spark rounds. It might have been a pistol, but I would do my best to give whatever rangers I came across a break. I also loaded a magazine with explosive rounds and another with armor piercing, though, just in case. Now we were underground, and still the Pitbuck navigation tag was below us. How it knew what I was after, I couldn't imagine, and honestly, my legs ached so much that I didn't even care. My chest hurt and my lungs burned, but when nobody was looking, I pulled aside my patch and let Glory check my eye socket. She looked grim, replaced the patch, and then kissed my forehead and told me not to worry about it. I tried my best. Now, we were in the more intact areas of the base, and I recognized where we were. This section was an almost exact copy of Marimar. It was a little bigger and had some more extensive damage, but I knew that below us and ahead was the base operations center. Like Marimar, only the close balefire blast and radiation had killed these base components. We could have split up to do things more efficiently, but after the lab, I was done with splitting us up while we were underground. We reached the operations room and found it dead cold. The door's motors weren't locked or anything, there just wasn't any power. Glory and Scotch held an impromptu conference, and we set out to find the circuit breaker and power supply. Why couldn't this be any easier? Since it was more or less on the way, we stopped by security. I picked up a slightly dusty assault rifle, an IF-64 boomerang, if I recalled. Still, I finally had something to do with all these light rifle rounds. There were even extended magazines. We were moving to the medical room. I took an opportunity to oil and service the weapon as well as I could. I caught Scotch's eye for a second before she looked away, lips pressed together, determined to be pissed at me. After picking out every last drug, we made our way to the maintenance bay, and then finally to the power supply. While P-21 filled his saddlebags with goodies, Glory and Scotch tape poured over several gigantic switch sets in the wall next to 3 massive cables coming out of the ground. I peered down through the grate on the shaft they descended into, but even with my mutated vision, I couldn't see the bottom. Scotch finally took out a rubberized cloth, stuck it in her mouth, and grabbed one switch. It clicked into place with a loud electric buzz. Then the second switch, and with it another buzz. Then a third switch, and noise. The lights flickered to life overhead. Hoofington Rises. It was painted on the wall in bright red letters. The author lay in a pile of bones beside the message. Paint can between its forelegs. I couldn't tell if it was 2 or 200 years old. It still made my mane crawl. Come on, I'm getting all kinds of weird vibes, I said as we walked back to the operations door. Just in and then out. I want to get out of here. Me too. This place is creepy, Scotch said, then glanced at me as if questioning if this was due to the overwhelming creeposity of the place or my brain manipulation. We trotted back to the door to the operations center, now powered but locked, and P-21 started banging away at the computer. Meanwhile, our pip-bucks were ticking from the slow, steady radiation. Scotch tape pulled out a scanner and, in less than a minute, had a panel next to the door out. Why couldn't Daddy have been an unicorn? She muttered, before sticking her hoof into the space and fishing around. I looked at the flustered P-21 as he tried for the password even faster, in a de facto race with his daughter. There was a spark of wires with the beep of the computer, and both declared simultaneously, "Done," before glaring at one another. I smiled, closing my eye and shaking my head as I stepped into the door. I opened it just in time to see a crackling green fireball being flung right at us. Fortunately, Lacuna had been paying attention, and she teleported in front to block us from it. The blast of magical fire still washed us all in crackling radiation, but only the alicorn bore the brunt of it. I should have known this had been going too smoothly. Red bars were lighting up right and left, and a choir of undead ponies howled in mindless hunger. Behind them reared a unicorn glowing with a harsh green glow and firing off balls of radioactive fire at us. The rest of the ghouls, now racing towards us on broken, jagged hooves, still had combat armor on. "Nothing is good under Hoofington. Nothing!" I shouted as I stepped beside Lacuna, Glory taking position on the other side of the purple alicorn. My rads were climbing rapidly. So I shouted for every pony to take a Radex and chew down on a tablet myself. Time to put the assault rifle to the test. I blasted automatic bursts at the first of the undead ponies that charged, the altering armor-piercing and explosive rounds chewing great gooey rents out of them. Glory laid down a strafing barrage of green beams. It looked like she'd gotten the conversion finished. Lacuna shielded us from the rain of fire with her own magic, bolstered by the radiation washing over her. Too bad the rest of my friends weren't so well fortified. There were too many coming too fast. I didn't have time to look as I heard the clattering of hoof claws in the hall behind me. Rampage leapt onto Lacuna's back and sprang over the alicorn as a ball of flame burst against her shield. Trailing burning tatters, the unpeated pony smashed into one of the armored ghouls with such force that his body nearly exploded into a pulpy mess. Rolling smoothly, she laughed gleefully as she latched her hoof claws into the one charging Glory and swung him away. "Invaders!" roared the undead unicorn. "Die, you striped bastards! You won't take us out of the fight!" The ghoul's voice barely reached me over the sounds of battle. I could have used some help myself. The assault rifle barked spray after spray of fire, and I jumped into sats, as often as possible. If I didn't destroy the head, they would just regenerate the damage. 3 charged at me once, and I braced myself for some pain. Then Persuasion thumped and blasted, and the blast knocked the 3 flying. I spotted the blue pony in the corner, barely visible as he reloaded another. Even Scotch joined in the battle, lying on her stomach as she fired at any ghoul that got too close to Lacuna. The glowing ghoul unicorn halted, lobbying exploding balls, and then turned into pouring on a stream of radioactive flame. I hissed as it scorched my legs and face from a near hit. "You shall never make me abandon my post!" The unicorn screamed as we fanned out. It was hard to say which would get me first, the fire or the radiation. "Burn, Stripes! Burn in Luna's righteous fury!" The radioactive fire sprayed from her horn like a sprinkler in all directions, and I dove under a desk as I lined up a shot. My bullets flickered and melted away as they got close to the ghoul, unable to penetrate the layer of radioactive flame around it. For fuck's sake. I focused hard, hoping that maybe I'd mutated up enough of this radiation and was doing me some good too. Sats and 4 magic bullets. Go! My glowing bolts shot across the room, guided by the precision spell to impact against the ghoul's skull. The flames died a little as each luminescent round smashed home, the quartet sending it ringing, its heat diminishing. A volley of magic arrows, green beams, and a grenade blew the rest of the ghoul apart. I was relieved to find that the radiation in the room was dropping, but not to 0. I need some Radaway. Bad. We probably all did. Glory broke out one of each for us, save for Lacuna. The alicorn said nothing, but I thought I caught a look of poor mortal creatures in her eyes. With my rads bouncing in the yellow, I approached the unicorn ghoul's corpse. The dealer stood by and sighed, placing a queen of hearts on her still glowing side. The uniform she wore had burned away, leaving bits of metal fused with her hide. I spotted one still glowing chunk. Jen Shimmerstar. A little square appeared around a name tag in my vision, and dancing lines of data scrolled rapidly before terminating with EC-1101, status update. General Shimmerstar, deceased, denied. Okay, that cleared that up. I spotted the terminal in the corner and clattered towards it. Okay, so where do you want to go now? I asked as I tapped the terminal keys. Pretty much at random. I needed P21 to... Whoa. The screen immediately flashed to life and began to scroll with numbers that made no sense. EC-1101 routing information. Fluttershy Medical Center. Hoofington. I've already been there, I groaned and smashed my pip-buck. Stupid, freaky magic tech. Blackjack? Can we get out of the deadly radiation now? P21 drawled as he looked around. The room was still damned hot, and I nodded. Lacuna, can you teleport us back to where we came in? With this much power? There was a purple flash, and a disorientation made my head spin. Certainly. Some pony gets cheeky when she's high on radiation. We were back on the floor with all the offices, and the radiation meter dropped to a comfortable slow click every few seconds. Every pony, but Lacuna, again, looked sick, though, even myself. We have any more Rataway? I asked Glory. 1 pouch, she said with a frown. I sighed and nodded, my head over to where Scotch was being sick. Give it a Scotch. Glory nodded and trotted over to her. I'd accomplished, well, something. Fluttershy Medical shouldn't be a problem. Oh, don't start thinking about that, Blackjack. Still, I couldn't think of a finer place in Equestria to suck out all the radiation swirling around inside me. Once Lacuna picked a location out of my memories, we could teleport straight there. After all, there was plenty of radiation around here for her to soak up. If the worst came to worst, she could tap that crystal and silver bullet together a few times and hopefully not blow up. Now for the harder step. Getting to Elder Crunchy Carrots and negotiating an end to all this. And for that, I needed a plan. Giving myself up to this acolyte might get me in, or it might get me killed. More importantly, it might get my friends killed. Crap. I couldn't just hand myself over and make it up on the fly. I had to think of something. I looked at Glory as she tried to convince Scotch to drink the rat away. She made me smile as she explained the effects of radiation poisoning, and that smile only continued as my eyes trailed along to her flank. Her sweet, sweet... There was a flickering blob going off in my brain. Shit. Will that work? I trot towards Scotch tape. Hey, I said as she fidgeted with the pouch. I hate this stuff. It tastes like butt and makes me pee rainbows. She muttered sullenly. Radiation never hurt. I looked at the olive filly with a small smile, arched a brow, and pulled back my left sleeve to show her the mottled, growth-laden surface. It looked like one solid bruise, yellow with ugly greenish-red blotches beneath the skin. Glory looked alarmed, but I shook my head. Now was no time to play doctor. Scotch took the hint and started drinking the orange medicine with a sour look. Sorry about messing up your head, I said as I sat down beside her. I just wanted you to be happy. Guess I fucked that up. Huh. Glory rolled her eyes as she trod away, muttering something about language. You'd be happy if someone messed up your head? Scotch tape asked. Are you kidding? I'd be bouncing on my hooves happy. I lied. I couldn't tell if she believed me or not as she looked down at the pouch of medicine. I need you to do something for me, Scotch, and it's something no pony else can do. You're going to ask me to stay behind so I can stay safe. Again? She grumbled. Why does every pony insist on treating me like a baby? I can disassemble a sewage pump in 15 minutes with 2 wrenches and a hammer. Then she sighed. I'm going to end up with a toilet for a cutie mark, aren't I? Be nice to find a working one, that's for sure, I teased softly, musing, messing her short blue mane. And I'm going to ask you to stay behind, but not because I want to keep you safe. I have to go meet with the rangers. If everything works out, well, it works out, then great. But if it doesn't, the only pony who can end this war will be you. Understand? I told her my plan, and she found a way to make it work. Well, up to a point. Still, this is crazy, Blackjack. What if they just shoot you? Then they're smarter ponies than me, I replied with a smile and kissed her brow. You know, we care about you, right? She flushed a little. Yeah, just don't get dead, Blackjack. There ain't many 99 ponies left. There's P21, I replied. He doesn't count. He hates me, she muttered. I sighed. He doesn't hate you. At least he better not. He just has a hard time with things that remind him of 99. It wasn't easy for him there. I know. Colts are weird. she said, rolling her eyes. Tell me about it, I said with a smile. Then I sighed again. I need you to hold on to something for me, okay? This is an IF-33 with an expanded magazine. It was my mom's. If something should happen, I don't want the Rangers to have it. Just be careful when you fire it. It's got a whole lot more kick than that dinky 9mm Paris Bright you shoot. She took care of it. She took with the care of someone who respected a machine that could hurt you. I appreciated that. There's one last thing I need you to do. You're not going to like it, but you're the only pony who can pull it off. She looked intrigued as I took a breath and said, I need you to act scared, so Glory will stay behind. I couldn't bear to see her in another situation like the one at Flash Industries. For a moment, she looked confused and then annoyed, but finally she seemed to understand and gave a little smile and a roll of her eyes. Great. More time with the most boring pony in the wasteland. I thumped her softly on the head. Maybe, but she's my mare friend, so be nice. Scotch Tape stuck her tongue out at me. And finish your medicine. Remember, it's not a rainbow if you don't hit all 6 colors. She smiled crookedly as she wrinkled her nose. You gross, Blackjack. And every pony thinks I'm the filly. I chuckled and then clattered back towards the others. You and P21 both, kid. Okay. We actually have a plan, B, so P21 and Rampage are with me again. Glory, Lacuna, and Scotch are here. And Q in 3, 2... Absolutely not! I'm coming with you, Glory said firmly, frowning. You have to stay here. Scotch is freaking out, and if Rangers come up here, I need you to help fight them off, I said, as I glanced at my shoulder at Scotch. She mouthed the words with impudent annoyance before she caught my glare and suddenly gave Glory a big-eyed look that just screamed, Look at me, I'm helpless. And if Steel Rain got his hooves on Glory, I'd give him EC 1101 and tell the Elder that Big Daddy had planned to turn her into a hat, if I had to. Glory sure didn't like it, but I knew that she had hoof cuffs. I'd use them if I had to. So, not just a plan A, but a plan B? P21 asked with a thin smile. And a plan C, I replied. Yep, I'm just brimming with the whole plans thing. Of course, knowing me and how my plans worked out. Yeah. Let's get started before I have to worry about a plan D. The dry docks were basically 4 giant long buildings covered in rust and salt. Huge cranes hung on gantries overhead, silently waiting to resume work on ships that would never be completed. All the locks had failed, filling the rooms with the reek of blackish water. The place had power and tools, though, and that, I supposed, was all that mattered. Most of the noise was coming from one corner of the cavernous space. We had everything ready, or at least as ready as it would ever get. My pip book was covered with duct tape that was ostensible, and to a degree, actually, holding the brace on that leg on. Everything else had been left behind with the other 3. Glory's starting to feel left out. She misses out on the whole terror and now all the suicidal strut. Rampage said as I limped along beside her. If things went stupid, she was our plan D. Water poured through holes in the roof in cascading columns as we stepped over heaps of rusted chain and bolts. A huge faded mural of Applejack in a sailor's outfit saluted us, all over the motto, Victory through blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah, but she gets to have sex with me, so she can't complain, I retorted. I didn't want to spook them and started off the shooty. I was nervous going in unarmed. I didn't even have a fancy sword. You're that good? Rampage asked with a smirk. No, but she is, I replied. Well then, maybe I should have sex with her and find out for myself when you're gone, Rampage said. her smirk transforming into a naughty grin. I rolled my eyes and snorted. Be my guest. She loves it when you nibble on, "Can we please cut out the lesbian sexcapade chit-chat while we walk towards an enemy that wants to kill us?" P21 said tersely, his already bristling mane frizzling even more. "I don't even know why I'm here." "You're here for when this chief acolyte commits his sudden and inevitable betrayal," I replied. His name was Napalm Strike. It hardly seemed trustworthy to me. "Next question. What is the plan if the elder says, 'Thank you for your concern. I'm going to shoot you anyway'? Because that's the step I'm missing," he said sourly. "I shoot her in the face, and we run for our lives and hope Lacuna can swoop in and port us to safety. Then we shut down the Rangers," I said firmly. "You're siding with the Reapers?" Rampage asked with pleasant surprise. I snorted. "I'm siding with whoever has less stupid and kills fewer innocent ponies. Right now, Steel Range trumps Psycho Shy in both departments." We stepped into a few of 10 or so unicorns handling all kinds of strange techie equipment while fixing up suits of power armor. They all froze at the sight of us. "Hi, I'm security. I'm looking for Napalm Strike." For several seconds, they just looked at each other and then us. They were clearly not ponies who expected 3 dangerous, wanted strangers to trot up onto them. I rose and put my hooves into the air. "We're giving up?" A power-armored pony pointed a Gatling gun at us, and I readied myself for sharp and painful death. Then an older-looking buck in red robes trotted towards me, looking quite put out. "I'm Chief Acolyte Strike. What are you doing here? How did you get inside our perimeter?" He looked at Rampage with alarm. "You're that Reaper, the immortal one." "You survived being put through a wood chipper and suddenly you're famous," Rampage said with a chuckle as she shook some rusty salt water off her hoof. "I'm just glad they recognized me without the armor." "We're here to speak to your leader about halting this war," I said, and the flat look he gave me did not bode well. I'm prepared to give her both the location of my stable in exchange for hearing me out. It was full of poisonous gas and dead bodies, but the words got the reaction I wanted. He immediately looked intrigued. "In my opinion, you're too late. We're about to crush this war once and for all, but if you insist, I suppose I can take your request to her." He nodded to the acolytes. "Search them." I did my best to hide my disappointment when they found the bobby pins under P21's tail, and in his mane, and mouth. They gave me the same treatment, even taking off my eye patch to make sure I didn't have a grenade or something in there. Really, what were they expecting? Given that my busted braces were taped to my legs, they couldn't exactly check them. I really doubted they wanted to. No pony wanted to look at swollen, nasty pony flesh. After that, the armored ranger fell in behind us, while Chief Acolyte Strike trotted in front. I hoped that the ranger was a real good shot if she decided to fire. We trot out to the dry docks and towards the pier the Celestia was tied up to. Once, she'd clearly been a magnificent ship, and even after 2 centuries, she possessed a strength and grandeur that I felt impressive. 3 turrets, 2 in the front and 1 towards the rear, pointed their barrels towards the city. And then I gaped as I saw one of the rear turret's cannon barrels slowly elevate. "You got it to work?" Rampage gaped in alarm. "You've been working on this rust bucket for years." "Indeed, and it is beginning to pay off. We fixed turret 3 months ago. Of course, the Elder resisted our many requests to fire it. There was a lack of proper ordnance, for one thing." "No bullets?" I asked in surprise. "No shells," he corrected, and I suspected that the orange acolyte would have been great buddies with textbook. "The Celestia has been docked for a major refit at the time of the attack, and all her shells had been removed. Sadly, their bunker is buried under tons of debris, so too much to be practically cleared. So, while we possessed ample stocks of powder, we had no shells. Until recently, that is. He pointed to a crane that was lifting something out of the water, a dripping net with a suit of power armor hanging onto it. Fortunately, the Luna's ordnance was intact. Marvelous engineering. I saw that the armor had been modified with numerous air tanks. Clever. Technology is to be used, not merely collected. The Elder is growing to appreciate that fact, he stated rather matter-of-factly. Except using it for war gets it blown up, I replied, earning a sour look from the sour chief acolyte. I'm just saying. And the Elder would agree with you as well. But when we are attacked, we must respond. The Codex commands it, he said as he walked out onto the wet pier. The rain was still pouring, and as quickly it was getting dark. Well, that and common sense, I replied. But somehow I doubt all the scavengers I saw with minigun bullets in them were attacking power armor. He frowned sharply at me, but said no more as we trot along the dock. Then I noted with surprise 2 other ships. One was far less grand, a rust-red ship half the size of the Celestia. It was flying a flag showing a Steel Ranger emblem, but with 3 apples instead of gears. Between it and the Celestia was the Seahorse? What is Thrush doing here? I exclaimed in surprise. He chuckled dryly. Oh, so you know that pirate? No surprise. She's guilty of numerous counts of technology smuggling and other assorted crimes. He pointed a hoof at the far ship. When the HMS Applejack was en route from Manhattan, they encountered the Seahorse, intercepted her, and towed her back here. Once we've wrapped things up, we'll strip out their engine. The rest is garbage. And what happened to the captain and her crew? Things were rapidly veering towards plan. Blackjack doesn't need something incredibly stupid and violent. They're in custody. They should have been thrown to the mercy of the sea, but the Trottingham Rangers are notoriously soft-hearted and soft-headed. I suppose the Elder will let the crew go and shoot the captain. Try not to sound so disappointed, P-21 murmured. That reply just saved you the trouble of having Blackjack tear this place apart. She gets destructive when her friends get hurt. Stupid, P-21. I get stupid when my friends get hurt. I corrected. I received an uneasy look from the chief acolyte. He looked decidedly out of his comfort zone as we walked up the gangplank and onto the Celestia. I was surprised by the number of rangers who weren't trotting around in power armor. I guess I'd gotten the idea that if you don't have power armor, you weren't a Steel Ranger, but most of these ponies didn't wear any. They were moving boxes and containers of supplies aboard the ship. It made sense. If the Reapers swarmed the base, they'd be sitting ducks on the pier. We were walking past the number 3 turret. Up close, you couldn't miss the rusty streaks, magically protected or not. Saltwater was hell on steel. Even I knew that. It looked like only the middle cannon was moving. The gun elevated agonizingly slow as the turret slowly ground around. Ponies were slopping grease around the edges with mouthfuls of mops held, while unicorns floated grease guns into the crevices. Clearly, battleships ran on grease. Down, he directed as we crossed a Pegasus landing pad to the rear and clattered down some narrow stairs. I had to wonder if Rangers could even wear power armor in these tight confines. After that, we went down more stairs, and incidentally, did I mention that I did not like stairs? My braced leg slips, and I went rolling down to the bottom. Are you sure you're security? Napalm Strike asked me bluntly. Catch me on a day when I'm not walking on screwed-up legs, and I'll show you security, I muttered as I pulled myself to my hooves, once more glad I couldn't break my legs. Of course, I still felt like I'd been beaten with a stick, but at least nothing was broken. We reached a long room that smelled of salt and dead sea things, and followed it along past large white drums set into rows along a metallized track. There were rangers pushing the steel drums from the track to a hoist that I guessed pulled it up to the gun. One of the drums had been dropped, spilling dark powder in a fan that two unicorns were very carefully scooping up. If one drum held that much powder, there were hundreds of drums down here. Too bad magic bullets didn't create much in the way of sparks. I'd need something incendiary to do a proper job. A grenade, or flamer, or something. Planning a party? Given the possibility of the base being overrun, it seemed prudent to leave a whole bunker of full gunpowder to the mercy of the burner boys. We loaded as much as we could and we needed, and sealed the rest away, he replied dryly. We passed through a thick door to another room, loaded with missiles and ammo crates by the thousands. There were enough bullets and missiles in here to kill every pony in Equestria 1,000 times over. Why in the name of Celestia would any country need so many bullets? Past that, we entered a space that was far more run down. Given how much effort there were putting into getting the turret working, getting the rest of the ship operational would take lifetimes. There was rust everywhere I looked, and most of the talismans were shot. Some engine or power source I couldn't imagine growled under our hooves, though, and we occasionally passed work crews trying to get some other parts of the ship to work. Finally, we were escorted into an empty magazine, which had far more rust and fish reek. The cages that held the powder drums in the other room were empty in this one, and they had been converted into cells. So, going to tell the elders straight away? I asked him. His sniff told me not to hold my breath. Eventually. I have my duties, but I will inform her that you wish to meet. If you want to know where my stable is, a nice, fully operational stable, you'll inform her before you start firing that gun, I said, as we were marched into an empty cage. The crew of the Seahorse roused at once, as we were locked in a room across from them. The acolyte sniffed. Yes, well, the elder is a very busy mare. There's a war on, you know. I'll see she's informed. I gave a little sigh. Of course he would. With that, he stepped out. Blackjack, is that you? Are you all right? Oilcan asked as the mare looked around. Oh, yeah, I was the pony with the night vision eye. Blackjack? A mare whimpered in pain in the dark. I looked around, but the other cages were empty. Thrush? Where's Captain Thrush? I asked. Here, but she's in a bad way, though. When she caused too much trouble, they made her go into a memory orb, and she hasn't woken up. It's been hours. Tarboots grumbled. I recalled going into one like that. A trapped orb that had shut me down until Priest snapped me out of it again. I thought I spotted Seabiscuit in the back. I heard familiar little sniffles and sobs somewhere in the dark room. Who's that? There was an uncomfortable pause, and then Oilcan said quietly, The sea ponies. They're in a bad way, too. Sea ponies? Oh, shit. Pisces? Capri? Some pony had thrown them in here without any water? Blackjack? Came Pisces' whimper. Please, help. Okay, plan B, now, I said as I pulled off my eye patch. P21, do you have any pins they missed? Nope. They were more thorough than you. Why do you have one? He asked in surprise. Uh-huh. They were busy searching me, but not my eye patch. I ripped open the padding, backing, and carefully tugged out the pin with my magic. The glow was one of the only wan lights in the room. I passed it to him, then carefully untaped a part of my brace, which happened to be a screwdriver. He eyed it and then looked up at me with, Celestia save us, Blackjack is becoming clever. Okay, keep that little horn of yours up. It's compact, Not little. I'd show him light. I fished around for a piece of scrap metal I could lift. I focused as much as I could to light it as he worked. A click, and the door opened. This was why he was awesome. Only he could unlock a door in near darkness. The lock on the seahorse's crew cage clicked, and the 4 ponies moved out. Then we moved to the next cell door over, and I froze. I never really appreciated what a fish was. A creature of water. I only knew them as glittering shapes in books next to little facts that they lived in water. I'd never thought of what happened if you took them out of water. Pisces and Capricorn lay on the floor. Their scales were cracking and flaking, their skin split and bleeding. Their fins had dried out and stuck to the floor. Capri was unconscious, maybe dead. The pink sea pony was partially glued to her sister. They needed water. Badly. And whoever pony had thrown them in here like this needed to die. It was a good thing that I'd met Crumpets and Paladin Stronghoof when I had. I was in a particularly shooty mood when it came to the Rangers. I knelt as P-21 started on the lock. Just stay easy. We'll get you out. Find a fire hose or a bucket or something. Mama. Please, Mama. Capri whispered weakly. Not monsters. We're not monsters. No, you're not. No pony was, and I was going to save them. No pony deserved to die like this. Get it open. Please. Get it open. I begged. P-21 scowled, rubbing his knee as he got to work. The screwdriver quivered. The lock's drum rotated slowly. The bobby pin snapped. No. No! I slammed with my hooves. Blackjack? What's plan B? P-21 asked me in the dark. I lifted a rag so that every pony could at least see the pale white glow. Get free and get ourselves out. But you can do that. You and Rampage. Go. He scowled at the others as they gawked. Well, don't just stand there. Get some sort of light and find me a damned bobby pin and a bucket of water. I looked at him with a thankful smile. Right. The large tar boots threw Thrush over his shoulder. As soon as you can get them out, get to your ship. We might have to get out of here as fast as we can if we can't meet up with Lacuna. I sighed and said, I really hope that Plan C is ready, because at this rate, Plan D is all we've got left. Relax. I excel at Plan D, Rampage said modestly. I'll remember that when Paladin Steel Rain blasts you into a fine red mist, I murmured as she opened the door. A pony in bizarre gray barding jumped to her hooves as the hatch opened. She scrambled for a beam gun as Rampage leapt at the mare, wrapped her legs around her neck, and heaved her clear over her back and crashed her to the deck with Rampage on top of her. The blue pony lazed in a daze. Rampage smiled at me and tossed me the beam gun. You forget. Close combat's my thing, Blackjack. Now take her stuff. It might keep you from getting shot. I stripped the mare, passing to P-21 any gear that wasn't a weapon as I dressed up as a Steel Ranger. If we see Rain first, though, I need to talk to him. Talk to him? Haha, Blackjack, that's a little suicidal, she said as she slowly began to make my way up some stairs. This ship was big. I'd have to ask for directions. Yeah, no offense, Blackjack, but how are you going to know the Elder when we meet her? 'Cause I have no idea what a Steel Ranger Elder looks like. I sighed. She'll either wear the biggest hat, carry the fanciest gun, have the most ridiculous outfit on, or be surrounded by ponies happy to kill us. What? Did I have to work everything out in advance? I'd gotten us aboard the ship, hadn't I? Couldn't think of everything myself. Now, could I? The HMS Celestia came in 2 flavors. Recently refurbished machine of war or abandoned derelict. And you could find both flavors within 10 feet of each other. One section would have the rust scoured away with bright and humming lights, the next would look like it hadn't been touched in 2 centuries. I couldn't figure out any rhyme or reason to it either. Somewhere there was an engineer in need of a good kicking. There also wasn't a sign anywhere in a language I understood. STLBAKACC? PRTENGNAV? RVTEXTBST? WHTTHFCK. We staggered into something that might have been a mess hall at one time, but now was just collecting dust. Except for the hoof marks that went through the room, I spotted a red bar ahead and moved against the wall. Another red bar moved slowly in front of us. I caught the swirl of red robes as the chief acolyte paced back and forth. "Shouldn't you be preparing the cannon?" came Steel Rain's voice, making my mane stand on end. My eyes popped wide. He was here. Actually here. "Listen up," I said softly, and Rampage's ears perked as the Star Paladin entered. To my immense relief, he was armed with a Gatling gun, grenade machine gun combo, which actually was still not good for us, but I liked it more than the idea of insta-kill at 2 miles. "Security is here," Napalm Strike said. "That's impossible. I have soldiers stationed with orders to shoot her on sight. She couldn't be anywhere near here." She walked up to us politely, and she pleaded with her friends. Offered me the location of a stable to speak with the elder. He hesitated, then added, "I must inform her of this. My oath—" "Oath!" Steel Rain snarled, cutting off the other. "What good are oaths these days? We swear to obey senile fools who have the power to force order on this city but refuse to exercise it. Who could use the ship to batter down the walls of the core and use the riches within to force a real tomorrow? Oaths." He snorted in disgust. "Only a fool honors a foolish oath. But the Elder is a dying breed. I've spoken with Elder Cottage Cheese and Star Paladin Nova personally about this. Naive optimists like Steelhooves and Stronghoof have no place here. They're fodder for the city. But ponies like us, who have the vision to see the potential of technology and the audacity to use it, we are the future." There was no hiding the fever in his voice. It practically trembled at his every word. "She's going to find out eventually," Napalm Strike protested. "And there'll be questions." Steel Rain chuckled low, long, and slow. "Let her find out. Let her ask her questions. But let her do it after we've turned the arena, the collegiate, and the skyport into rubble. Once we are victorious, it doesn't matter how she protests. And when the old nag finally expires, either you or I will replace her, and we'll have a glorious new future to look forward to." "I suppose," he murmured sullenly. "Get that cannon firing. The sooner our enemies' strongholds are rubble, the better," Steel Rain finished. "Let me worry about security." I couldn't believe my luck. This was exactly what I needed to hear. I bit my lip as I forced the urge to cheer. Then there was a pause, and my ears prickled. Then he said in a lower voice, "You know, technology is such a wonder. Take this power armor, rebreather, prepare talisman, the armor itself, the heavy weapons. But do you know what the most useful feature is?" I frowned as I looked at Rampage. "Eyes forward sparkle." He finished in a grave tone. Then there was a heavy chrome as a grenade machine gun blasted the doorway we sheltered in. Rampage grabbed me faster than I could even have imagined and threw me away as his exploding rounds blew her into chunks. Clanging forward, I barely got myself to my feet when he appeared in the doorway and blasted a streak of minigun fire and a spray that made my ass burn. We were now officially on Plan E. Run for my fucking life. So long as Steel Rain was on me, P21 and the others could have a clear shot, as would Rampage when she regenerated. My legs clattered and jerked, my flanks on fire as he ran down the hall behind me. I tried to yank shut hatches as I passed, but they were too heavy for my magic to move, and I didn't dare to stop as he followed. I passed a set of stairs, but with my legs wobbling around beneath me, I didn't dare try and scramble up it. One slip or trip, and I'd be all over. I dared look back behind me in time to see him pass through one of the tight hatches, and my jaw dropped in amazement as he twisted his body with ease to allow him to pass through without getting stuck. And here I could barely run and keep ahead of him. I needed a door, something that I could close. I raced past one unarmored mare who stepped behind me, only to be blown to pieces by the grenades. "Get out of the way!" I screamed as I ran, passing another 2 unicorn onlookers. Finally, I passed around a dogleg that made into a steep stair. My legs skidded and slipped as I kicked and scrambled up. I pushed against the hatch overhead, my horn struggling to find the rusty wheel. He came around the corner just as it gave a screech and opened up into the rain-swept landing pad at the rear of the ship. A few spotlights illuminated it in a glaring light and shadow. I got clearance of a grenade machine gun, and he sprayed me with ricocheting metal. Did I mention that I hated Hoovington? 2 mares scrambled to me as I lay there, writhing from a dozen little holes that appeared in my hide. "Hold still," one shouted, holding out a healing potion. I slipped it down eagerly, before there was an alarm sounding somewhere else. The mare shouted to the other, "We have to get below deck, before—" Celestia fired. The cannon was at least 100 feet away, but the force of its firing washed over me like a full-body sledgehammer. Maybe it was the healing potions that spared my ears, but for several minutes I just writhed futilely. Further off, a flower of flame bloomed to the southwest. I recovered first. I suppose that I was more used to getting blown up at this point. I pushed the mares down the hatch. Steel Rain was gone for the moment, and I couldn't leave them up here. Then I started across the flight deck, but the waves in my ringing head and wobbly legs sent me sprawling once again. Cold rain sloshed around me. I really wanted some buck. Something, anything, to get me out of here. The Celestia fired again, a spectacular tongue of flame escaping away in the night. Flat against the deck, I had some protection, but it left me with a distinct sensation of being stepped on. "Stop firing, damn it!" I murmured. "Did you hear that?" Steel Rain's voice boomed from his armor as he stepped out into the rain. "That was the roar of technology, of power. It is a sound that will be repeated all across Equestria as we finally take our proper place." Slowly, he walked out towards me. "You've given me quite the gift, security. This war, the excuse to purge this city of the filth that keeps us from our legacy. We will obliterate all that stand against us. We will put this technology to use, not let it rot in some bunker." Slowly, I pulled myself to my hooves. "You also murdered innocents," I said, trying to use my rage to focus. "I saw the execution piles." "Simply ridding the hoop of a few extra mouths. Why waste it on filth like that?" he said as the rain poured down upon us. "You can never begin to appreciate the importance or usefulness of technology." I straightened as I looked at him. "Oh, I don't know. I've gained a whole new appreciation for hot showers, soap, and flushing toilets." Slowly, I smiled. "You know what else I've appreciated?" I could imagine him scowling as I swayed a little on my hooves. "Silence." I pointed my hoof behind him, and there, looking down at him, was a unicorn under a rain-shielding spell. I'd been right about everything except the hat. Elder Crunchy Carrots looked so rough and raw that she could chew steel and piss nails. Suddenly, I had the sensation that I was about to be grounded for the rest of my life. Okay, that was actually probably possible at this point. The orange mare floated a strangely delicate-looking gun beside her, as she glanced down with a furious gaze. Around her were dozens of power armor-clad ponies and acolytes. At her side was Scotch Tape and Glory. "Elder, what's going on? You've got a big mouth," Scotch Tape yelled as she reached to her pip-buck and pushed a button. His voice began to play loud and clear. No pony moved. With my night vision, I saw a dark lacuna fly overhead and drop my barding and bags beside me. I squirmed as I shed the shredded raider barding for my own, slightly less shredded security armor. I slipped on one of my saddlebags. The olive filly chuckled. "Courtesy of Radio Blackjack." I smirked, tapping my covered pip-buck. "Ain't technology grand?" "Star Paladin Steel Rain, you have demonstrated gross contempt for our order, your oaths, and your position. Have you anything else to say in your defense?" The elderly orange mare said with a fierce glare. I might have done her a favor without recording, but I had to remember that we still hadn't settled things. For a few seconds he stood there, and then slowly turned to face her. "Defense? What have I said that wasn't the truth? How many generations have wasted their lives hoarding and gathering weapons and technology, only for it to be wasted? How many more generations will we have to suffer the weak incompetence of leaders like you who hide and cower, and quote rules, and talk of oaths, and do nothing?" He pointed his hoof up at her. "For the first time ever, we have an unrivaled weapon against our foes, and you are the only thing standing between us and the future we deserve." As I finished buckling everything into place, I looked around. Then I frowned. This wasn't going like it should. Now every pony wasn't just facing the Star Paladin. Now there were more and more rangers turning to face the Elder. Oh, shit. Why did I suddenly get the sensation that everything was about to blow up? I'd come here to stop a damned war, not start a second one within the Rangers themselves. "Are you fucking serious?" I screamed as I stepped into the middle of it. "What the hell is wrong with all of you? I don't care if you guard tech or use it, but you're so caught up that you can ignore the shit you're inflicting on every pony in the hoof?" I pointed towards the shore. "Right now, Stronghoof and Crumpets are fighting to save lives in the hopes that you are going to pull your heads out of your armored asses. I came here with that hope. I'm willing to give you the location of my stable if you only knock this shit off." "Please," I begged mentally, "don't do this." The Elder glanced at me, her sour expression softening a touch. "Thank you for your word, Security, but this is an internal matter. For your assistance in bringing this to light, I am issuing you and your young mare here a pardon. You are free to leave." She pointed back down at Steel Rain. "Paladins, arrest him." No pony moved. Then one armored pony slowly approached him, then another, and another. For once it seemed as if sanity would prevail and there'd be a hope of the butchery ending. That sanity broke as they reached Steel Rain, and turned to face the Elder shoulder to shoulder, and there were more than half standing with him. "So be it," the Elder said softly. Oh, shit. She pulled the trigger, and the bolt of lightning blasted out. A ranger leapt in its path. The lightning cascaded over his armor, and his lights went dead. A full barrage of grenades and missiles answered. The Elder disappeared behind a shield as she fell back while the rest of the acolytes returned fire. I didn't care about that, but Glory and Scotch were up there. Out came my assault rifle as the other rangers realized that I was still a threat. I sent a line of crackling blue bullets against them. The insanity had become to a head. I had tried my best. Some ponies refused to do better. "Get Glory!" I screamed, and thought as hard as I could as I staggered to some stairs up to the deck of the turret. I didn't know if Lacuna heard me or anticipated me, but she swooped down to where I'd taken cover and disappeared with a purple flash. Beside the Celestia, the seahorse slowly pulled away. I just needed to live long enough for her to come back for me. I guessed a minute. Maybe 2. 2 minutes is a lifetime when 18 ponies in power armor were shooting at you. They were moving up along the ship as the Elder and her acolytes fell back. I was surprised to see Napalm Strike fighting alongside the Elder, the other orange unicorn conjuring up sheets of flame and exploding blasts of fire. The Elder had been wounded and was being dragged back. As horrible as the war was, I couldn't think that this ship being in Steel Rain's hooves. Weapons were used for a reason. You didn't fire them simply because you could. Speaking of Steel Rain, he seemed to come straight at me. The Star Paladin appeared to have taken a personal dislike towards me, and I responded with bursts of crackling blue bullets. I was taking cover far more than he was, though, as that grenade machine gun sprayed death at me. I had to get higher, get out of here. Maybe meet up with Stronghoof and Crumpets and work out something. I couldn't just give up. I staggered up to the turret, then climbed up a narrow stairway to the top of the heavily armored structure. There was so much gunfire that I wondered if some pony was taking shots at Lacuna and keeping her away. Did Rampage get out? What about P-21 and the sea ponies? Any time now, Lacuna. And then he climbed atop the turret opposite me. I slipped into sats and fired 4 bursts, yet only 2 hit him through all that rain. I managed to squeeze off 3 magical bullets that were far more lucky. They struck his helmet, peeling away smoking steel. He was a surprisingly gentle-looking buck. Then my world went black as his grenade rifle blasted the turret before me. I screamed as fire erupted in my face, shrapnel cutting deep across my front. I tried desperately to wipe the blood out of my eye. I had to see. If I couldn't see, why couldn't I wipe the blood away? That blood was my eye. My hoof touched the fiery ruin of my missing eye. I needed Hydra, a healing potion, something. My hooves fumbled with my saddlebags. Then a minigun burped, and pain erupted at my shoulder. At least I got the saddlebag off. "I should thank you again," he said from somewhere behind me as I scrambled in my bags. Was that Hydra? Medex? Radex? There was a burst that tore into my cutie mark, and I screamed, jerking as I fell over onto the bag and scattered the syringes. "You finally brought it to the fore. Now we can have a new beginning. A proper future." Another burst along my opposite side. I fired wildly, but once my gun was empty, I couldn't load it blind. I reached in, desperate to find something. Anything. My hoof nudged a smooth case, and I felt it pop open. My other hoof felt the smooth, heavy barrel. I froze, feeling myself grow cold. "I'm coming," Lacuna said in my mind. Thanks, Lacuna. But I couldn't leave this ship in the hooves of this mad pony. Inside the saddlebags, I cracked open the breech and slammed the silver bullet home. I heard the weapon latch and the hum of the systems interacting with my pip-buck. "Blackjack, don't do this," the dealer said. I ignored him as I struggled to my hooves. "You know what that will do." "Yeah, and I can't get much worse." "Blackjack, don't." "I'm doing it," I replied. I had no time for crazy anymore. I had to stop this for good, if it was the last thing that I did. Steel Rain paused in his tirade as I drew the loaded folly from the saddlebags. "What is that thing supposed to be?" he asked as I pointed the weapon. "You don't actually think you can hit anything with that, do you?" "Yeah, something," I replied, slipping into sats with practiced ease. I mentally hit yes over and over again. Then the tingle of the magical field wrapped around me. The feeling of immobility. Well, this was it. Folly fired. Straight down. I wasn't sure which was worse. the sound of folly as he'd made a 2 feet of reinforced armor vaporize beneath me, or the monstrosity exploding that followed. I felt the wet pressure soaking against every inch of my body, trapped against my skin by the magic. Only the magic fields kept me from an instantaneous death, but when they faded, I felt the turret lifting higher and higher, as if it were all floating away. Everything was tumbling end over end. Up and down didn't exist. There was simply the explosion and the scream of steel and twisted metal. I hit the cold, salty water, bubbling there as it stung my bloody eye sockets. I could barely move. Somewhere nearby were screams and the noise of the ship. My barding, my braces, everything was dragging me down. Then I heard the sound of groaning metal above me. I lifted my battered hooves as I was crunching beneath the waves into cold black depths. Funny, glory, went my very last thought as I was pushed deeper and deeper into the frigid water. Only a pony with my luck could have dropped a boat on them. Twice. Footnote. Level up. Error. Out of bounds exception. Error.